Welcome everybody to our Thursday, September 6th, 2018 Forest Lake Area School Board meeting. Let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody. If you've got any questions about what the school board meeting is all about, there's some information over on the table. If you'd like to speak during our scheduled and unscheduled visitors, there's a green card over there you can fill out and give to me as long as it's on a topic that's on our agenda, so I'm not expecting anybody. And with that, Member Clerk, could you please take a roll call?
Member Corcoran? Here. Member Moorhead? Here. Member Peterson?
Here.
Member Odegaard?
Here.
Member Tyson is absent. Member Rayfield?
Here.
And Member Olson is here.
All right. Do you have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Scheduled and unscheduled visitors, listening session, Member Corcoran and Olson.
Actually, I subbed for Member Olson. We had a couple of visitors and discussion on the upcoming levy, as well as some employee benefit program.
All right, thank you. Student achievement, Forest Lake Senior High.
Welcome.
Member Chairman, Dr. Massey, the rest of the school board, thank you for having us tonight. This is our annual State of the High School address, if you will. And what I wanted to do is to take some time and refresh us on what are we here for. And really the mission of the Forest Lake High School has not changed for several years, to ensure that all students graduate with the skills necessary to attend a college, university, technical college, or training program and succeed. All of the decisions that have been made since Dr. Massey was there, all the way through while I am there with our current team and staff, with 9th grade now joining the building, all revolve around this mission. We've added a college and career coordinator this year, Molly Bonnet, who I will introduce here in a little bit, who was with us last year in a different capacity and really laid a lot of groundwork to bring in that college career tech piece as well. Before we get there, I want to summarize for you some of our testing data, and I know Dr. Komatsu is also going to talk, so I will breeze over this. The good news is we're still above the state average in both science, reading, and math. The red line up there, that is our science MCA test for this last year. We're well above the state average in science. We continue to do very, very well. The science department as a whole has really bought into the teaching to standards and using formative assessment to adjust their instruction as they go through the year, so the kids are meeting those standards at a high rate. The next one down is reading. That is the orange bar. We are parallel with the state. We have a lot of work to do there. The good news is we're above the state average. Reading at the high school is a little difficult because we do not have a specific class that teaches those skills. So they're getting it in their 9th grade language arts class. They're getting those skills in their 10th grade language arts class. But we also have to pull in Phy-Ed, health, other language arts courses, math, to continue to work on those standards throughout the reading test. That's very difficult, as you can imagine. So we're doing a lot of work in all of those areas this year, bringing in those language arts standards and having all core areas teach to those standards. The blue line there is our math, and if you can see the last few years, we've been making some nice increases in the area of math. They're doing a lot of the same things that our science department is doing. This last year, and if you look at the decline from last year to this year in math, is similar to the decline that we had the year before in reading. Lloyd might argue with me. I would call that a cohort effect a little bit, but we still need to work really, really hard making sure that we're teaching to those standards with fidelity and making sure that all kids are meeting those standards in their math courses. The other thing that makes that difficult is our math students are all over the board. When you get into 11th grade, not everybody's taking the same math course, where in science, they're a little more streamlined together. But overall, very happy with the work that we're putting in, but do realize as a school and a staff, we have a lot of work left to do. Our AP 5-year mean, this is very impressive, and my mean line disappeared when we that's quite okay. The 3 up there, that's a passing AP test score. And if you can imagine a dark line all the way across there, we have an incredible pass rate on our AP tests. For the last 5 years, we have hovered around high 60% pass rate. These last 2 years, we're at 66% pass rate in all of our AP tests, all of our areas that are tested through AP. Some of those to point out are bio classes for the last 5 years have had average test scores where most of their kids are passing the bio test. You might look at chemistry and say, what is going on with chemistry? When I met with the science department and we were talking about that, they were very quick to point out chemistry is taken in 10th grade with most of our students. That is their first exposure to an AP test. Because of that exposure, that's a direct correlation to how successful we are in biology. We're also seeing some of those same results with U.S. history and world history. Our ACT data, this is our scores from 2017. The state average is 21.81. At Forest Lake Area High School, our average score is 22.54. That is a goal of ours to increase that test score. One of the things that is frustrating there is not all of our kids take the AP or the ICT test anymore, because of the way the state has changed it. So we highly encourage all of our students to do that, but there is no way to force them to go take that ACT test. Our mean scale scores in the different subject areas, in English and in all of these areas, we are above the state average except for science. And I'm going to want to double check that because I believe that we might have lost something in translation when we switched to this version of this PowerPoint. But in English, high score at 21.17, math 23.03, reading 22.5, and science right now we're at 22.8, so right there with the state average. Our PSEO and concurrent enrollment, this is very interesting to me. PSEO at the state, 10% of our students statewide participate in PSEO. At Forest Lake High School, we only have 11% of our students. When you look at the concurrent enrollment statewide, 11% of the students statewide participate in some sort of concurrent enrollment class. At the Forest Lake High School, 79% of our students at some point participate in a concurrent enrollment class. I attribute that to, we don't just hit those core areas when we're looking at concurrent enrollment. College in the schools courses where the students complete the class and also get college credit. We have college in the schools or concurrent enrollment classes in agriculture. We have them in business. We have them in science, social studies, all of our subject areas. So any student has access to those classes. Graduates working. This data is over 4 years. At the state, 69% of the students are still enrolled in college. From Forest Lake area schools, we have 67% of our students that are still enrolled. Some of those students went through a 2-year school, so they are now employed. So 25% of our students are employed within those 4 years. And then unknown, we have 8%, which is right in line with the state. And all of this data was taken from the state SLED report. So I wasn't just making it up. So that's just sort of a summary of where we're at with the high school. The real base of what we're doing that keeps our kids energized is a lot of the stuff that Molly has been putting together. So right now I'm going to hand this over to Molly Bennett. Molly was recently appointed as our college and career coordinator, and we're super happy to have her. I will let her tell a little bit about herself and share what she's been up to.
Thank you, Jim. I always tell people that I have the best job in the building, and I truly believe that I do, because I have the true honor of exposing our students to all of their options after they graduate from high school. And oftentimes, they truly don't know what they can all do. So I view my job as linking them up to what they can use their skills and interests and goals for their future lifestyles to connect them to the pathway that would best suit them. So this is just a quick overview of where our students have been going the past 2 years. It's very common for all the high schools in the metro area to have kind of a 1 and 2 of the U and their closest community college, and we're no different. They happen to flip-flop, but generally the U and Century are some of our highest desired schools that they choose to attend. Students not only can receive guidance from me, I meet with students individually quite frequently, but of course they also have their dean of students And then weekly, they will have Ranger Connect lessons and additional information available to them on Google Classroom to help make sure that they're always staying aware of what they need to be thinking about for those next steps. So I like to think of us as having a really strong support network for our students, where it's teachers, deans, and myself. Last year, I started focusing on this idea of the fact that we really need to have a different viewpoint about our economy. And instead of immediately saying, okay, I need to go to college and I get there and I don't know what I'm supposed to do there, and that's how we end up with quite significant attrition rates at the state level, and our students are no different, to instead think, what do they want to do? And then from there to research what program can serve them to build the skills to do that, and then what schools have those programs. So it's a bit of backward planning. The other thing that I focused on last year is that we, and this has not changed for decades, but we have a 1-2-7 economy. And many students aren't aware of the fact that for every one job in our economy that requires a master's or a PhD, we have 2 that require a 4-year degree and 7 that require a 2-year degree. Using that point just to illustrate to students that there are very viable occupations and career paths that you can follow through a 2-year degree. Particularly right now, we're seeing that explosion in manufacturing and healthcare. So my message to students is think about what lifestyle it is you want eventually. It's no longer the case they're finding with our current generation to say you just go and you work hard and you just kind of put your nose to the grindstone and just do it for doing its sake. They want to actually think about first what it is they want, both financially and with their time. With millennials, it's very important to them to have great flexibility in their schedule. So what is that lifestyle? And then to really encourage earlier research so that they don't become paralyzed by all of these choices. I also often tell students, paths change, and it's okay that your path changes, and many paths can lead to the same destination. So they can kind of just have some momentum moving forward instead of being so fearful of selecting a path that's going to lock them into something forever. Nothing's forever. So a few of those opportunities that I try to create for students so they can have this well-rounded exposure. First of all, last year was our first year that we brought back from a 7-year hiatus our Minnesota Education Fair, College Fair. It's next Thursday. Everybody's invited. We have nearly 85 colleges and universities in attendance. Last year, it was quite a successful event with 600 students and parents attending. Hopefully, we will have an even higher number this year. Last year, we had a Trade Career Expo, which Jeff Peterson was able to participate in kindly, and that was an opportunity for students to see what all these different trade careers did in the context of our new building and our building that was under construction. So they moved around the high school and Century, or what was Century Junior High, to see what it looks like to be an HVAC, or what it looks like to be a pipe fitter, and what you're actually working with. We also went on some manufacturing tours. In the top right, that's a picture of Rosenbauer, which is located in Wyoming, one of the largest manufacturers of fire trucks. And the picture on the left is from Construct Tomorrow. That's a little bit different, where we take students to a central location, and the trades have different demos set up where they can actually do the skill that would be involved in that trade. So in this case, he's laying some brick. College Knowledge Month is in October, and it's a month to really focus on developing those skills that students need that are interested in applying to college. And then CT Month is in February, and again, we focused on those career tech pathways. This is a picture. We took a group of students to the National College Fair down at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Throughout the month, I held workshops for students that would range from how to write a college essay to what questions to ask on a campus visit. We had some parent nights and lots of information sharing. In addition, throughout the whole year, we have many colleges that come in. Students can sign up to visit with admissions counselor from colleges that come in. We have industry visits. This is Ardent Mills from Rush City. They're a flour mill. They came in to talk about their apprenticeship program. And then trade visits. I write a College and Career Center newsletter that's distributed to juniors and seniors and their parents, and it's just to highlight different things that they should be focusing on at their timeline to prepare for their post-secondary path. And then we also have a scholarship newsletter. Last year, we hosted 2 career exploration days where students had the opportunity to hear from professionals in a field of their choice. We had, in total, probably over 100 different professions last year, with nearly 200 professionals in the building sharing their time to discuss their professions. And then in the spring, we also hosted a career fair where we had the military, trade unions, service opportunities, employment opportunities, and colleges and universities. So many students told me they were able to get a job for the summer through the career fair. We just really tried to make sure that they had the opportunity to expose themselves to many options. On the horizon, this year, I'm excited that we're going to be hosting a FAFSA Help Night for parents. So we'll have volunteers in our schools for a night where parents can come in and complete their FAFSA and have some of their frustrations quelled right from the onset. College Choice, we're going to combine with conferences on October 9th and have a speaker come in to talk about college choice as well as financial aid. Probably a little bit later on in the year, we'll host a panel where we have a representative from Moore Tech School, community college, four-year public university, state school, private school, so they can have the opportunity to hear from admissions people at all those different places. And then, of course, I love just thinking of more ideas to help serve our community. Do you have any questions? I'm sorry, I spoke too long. Yes, you're good.
Molly, you mentioned military right at the end there, but
yeah, I'm actually remiss. Go ahead.
Good, because I know school
Yes.
often includes that when you give, because that's a choice for some students.
Absolutely. We host, they're not necessarily, our military recruiters don't choose to have visits where they're having a group of students that are called down, so that's sometimes why I forget it. They usually have a day of the month that they will come and have a table in the cafeteria, and so most of our branches will have one day a month, every month. So like Air Force, I meet with all the recruiters, and in the beginning of the year, Air Force maybe has first Tuesday, and National Guard has second Wednesday. In addition to that, I did expand it a little bit last year, and we had an information session on our military academies, because I feel like our students don't have enough information about that, and they need to start that application process a full 2 years in advance because it's very extensive. So we had an information session on that, as well as ROTC, also a program that our students aren't as familiar with. So thank you.
I'm just gonna say I'm really excited that, because that's such a very confusing time for kids. And I know when my son was a junior, I was totally didn't know what to do. And it just really, that's just so necessary at our school. So thank you for having all these great ideas, because the more guidance you can give them, the more successful they're going to be choosing the right options for them.
Thank
So
you.
thank
Yeah,
you so much,
absolutely.
Molly. Yeah.
Very impressive for the third day of school, Molly.
It's all happened already. They all know what they're doing.
I got a story.
Oh, no.
I may as well share it now.
You can share it, if not, I was going to.
Okay. I go on the second day, so now we have all 4 years represented, and so you walk in the morning before they come, and all of a sudden they're just massive, students everywhere, and they're all doing some smiling and regrouping and all of that. That's at 7:45. And so I'm thinking, wow, this building is really full. So I'm walking around talking, and I get back to the office. Now it's 8:05. There isn't a sound. There isn't a person. It was like a horror movie that all of a sudden just someone zapped everybody out of the building. And so my comment was how well the staff was organized and took care of their students. They were all out there at 7:45, and 8:05 they were all in the classroom. There wasn't a sound. I never forget that. Standing there thinking, there's not even lost. I'm looking down all the hallways. Nobody's out there lost. So I was very impressed.
And a big part of that is a thank you to the school board for adjusting our school calendar, bringing the 9th and 10th graders in that day before. I've heard from numerous parents how the stress level of their young students coming to the high school is totally squelched, and they were able to get their schedules taken care of that day, so they weren't in with the upperclassmen doing that. They knew what to do at lunch. It's made the last 2 days go very, very, very smoothly.
And Jim, next year, the concept would be to do that with 9th graders.
Correct.
As the new group next year.
Correct. But it was impressive. I do have to give a shout out to Kim Van Coolen, who, with all of our transition that we've had at the high school, with some deans moving on, Kim stepped up and totally planned that link activity for 1,000 students virtually by herself.
Wow.
With a lot of support and a lot of groundwork was laid before she left, but she did a phenomenal job getting that laid out. And it was a good couple days.
Well, they did that when the bells weren't even working right.
Well, and with just a huge thank you to the community. Again, the building looks phenomenal. We still have some things that we're tweaking, but with new construction comes things that you don't know. You know, an electrician clips a wire accidentally and our bells are our main clock is still 2 hours off from what our master clock says, but you know, the kids, it doesn't bother them. It doesn't bother the staff. The bells are not working, they're on time, but they're not syncing, so you look at a clock and a bell goes off, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. But people just do, they know what to do, and a lot of that's just a tributation to all the great stuff that's happened before we came.
And a lot of thanks to Jim from the staff as I was walking around that
Thank you.
you're doing a great job. One more thing with Molly, next Thursday is going to be horrible, great big Rotary event, and the Tesla event, and now this event. So where is it going to be? Is it going to be in the field house?
Yeah, it's in the South Field House, and unfortunately, they dictate the date to us. I had requested all sorts of dates in October, November, April. Of course, they're like, September 13th is your date. So we're rolling with it, and it'll be
It'll be good.
it'll be
Good
good
for early part of the year, to get people thinking and get them.
Yeah, no, some
It's actually good to start early, but, and I know we're looking forward to our tour.
Yes,
So
we're
I was in
excited.
there today, it looked phenomenal. It was so nice to see all that natural light coming through and so bright and cheerful there.
It's a beautiful gift.
It's very
And
nice.
it's good it's at the field house. I was at a Rotary event today and one of the ladies came up and said, have you taken everybody in that field house yet? And I said, well, no. And she said, well, they had an event there. And she said, if I hadn't been there and saw it, and now I want to tell everybody what their textiles was spent on. She just thought it was an amazing space. So I'm glad to see that they use that again. I think she's right. The more we get people in, the more they'll appreciate that big long white building that isn't marked yet. But
It's coming.
It's coming, except the stripes. Stripes.
All right, any further questions?
I'll be really quick. Jim went really quickly over a couple of really critical points. I don't want you to miss in his presentation. We offer college level credit in career tech ed and AP to college and schools. There are college concurrent enrollment bearing courses for every student at the high school. Also, Jim mentioned our AP scores across the board. Those scores rival most high schools in the state in terms of overall pass rate, especially given what you see in chemistry. And lastly, the science scores might be the highest or certainly among the highest in the state and have been for the last 2 years. Just incredible results of the staff.
All right,
Thank you.
Well, I would just say, just to kind of finish up, just be sure to thank your staff on behalf of the school board. We really appreciate the work, and I mean, it's really nice to see. I mean, we've really always felt it was important that academics was the critical thing that we wanted to focus on, but to have the academics tied so much to career readiness and college readiness afterward, after our students leave us, just makes so much sense, and I think gives a meaning to what they're learning in a way that's just amazing to us. So be sure to thank everyone on our behalf.
We will, thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, one more thing I would be remiss, I just realized I forgot a slide. We have a new project called Project Launch that I want to mention very quickly. We've teamed with the Lake Center and the high school together to create a pathway for apprenticeship for our students. So we've gone out in our community and we've partnered with Team Vantage and WDI Woodworking and Rosenbauer and some other places. And the goal is to create a pathway where they need to participate in certain career readiness skills, job shadowing, our career exploration days, tours, and eventually, and certain courses eventually culminating in the opportunity to apply for an apprenticeship where they would spend half of their school day on-site learning skills and being paid simultaneously and earning credit. So it's kind of a win 3 ways for students. And I just realized I didn't include that slide. So I wanted to make
For our
sure.
district. It's so wonderful to have you in that position.
Well, we have such amazing businesses in our community, and we should be taking advantage of their willingness to expose our students to these opportunities. So it's exciting, very exciting.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Assessment and testing update, superintendent?
Yeah, I've asked, given the fact that we have a relatively short agenda, don't mistake that as you're going to get out of here in 20 minutes. I've actually thought that this would be a great night to go a little bit deeper into student achievement across the district. The state has developed a new reporting mechanism. It's not meant to be a quick judge on the quality of schools as much as a tool for districts to dive into their areas of strength and areas of need. So it's called the North Star Reporting System, and I've asked Dr. Camacho to spend some time explaining that, but also getting us a little bit into the weeds on student achievement across the district. I think it's really critical that we have a deeper understanding of how our students are doing around student achievement. Then we'll have Director Diane Georgie spend a little bit of time getting us into the weeds as well around what are we doing around literacy and math as a system. So Dr. Camacho, thank you.
Yeah, I'll spend my time talking about the North Star system, which, as Dr. Massey mentioned, is our new accountability system under ESSA, right, ESSA, which is the newest reauthorization of the original ESEA, which was reauthorized, but the prior reauthorization that's where No Child Left Behind was. So ESSA replaces No Child Left Behind. And it's an interesting idea because the whole philosophy, the whole approach of this accountability has changed. Instead of trying to identify failing schools and doing things to them, the idea is to try to identify where the state can put its limited resources to try to provide support to schools. So the state has certain achievement targets, but there aren't targets for individual schools or individual districts. And the idea is, okay, for the state to reach its achievement goals, it has to help schools and districts that are out there. So the purpose of the North Star system is to identify where to allocate resources to have maximal impact. And the analogy that MDE sometimes uses is that the North Star system is like a smoke detector. So trying to figure out where's the smoke out there. That's the identification process. But once you've done that, really, the early step is to really get in there and figure out what's causing the smoke, right? What's the nature of the fire in a particular institution, particular organization. You don't go in there to treat the smoke. You go in there to treat the fire. So the idea is to get in there and really understand the particular situation in an identified school or district. State targets are defined for students overall as well as for different groups, just like in NCLB, where you have various racial groups and the free and reduced price lunch group, special education group, and the English learner group. There's a slight modification in our racial or ethnic groups. Now our state practice corresponds to what the feds have been doing, which is a student can, or parent, can check more than one racial or ethnic group, and students who check more than one are put into the classification of 2 or more. So we have Asian, that's been slightly modified. It used to be Asian/Pacific Islander, now it's just Asian. American Indian or Native Alaskan, Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, that's where Pacific Islanders went. White and African American or black. Separate from that is Hispanic, which is considered an ethnicity. So people are first asked the ethnicity question, are you Hispanic or not? If you check yes to that, then on all of our further classifications, you get classified as Hispanic. But in addition to being asked the Hispanic question, you're asked the racial question, where the white, black, American Indian, Asian, Pacific Islander things come up. And so it's a 2-step process now, and it results in some change in the comparability. So it's a little hard to track things consistently. How are we doing with this group? Well, because the definitions changed a tiny bit, the comparability can be a little shaky. But in our district, that's not too big of a problem. So the state's targets, 90% of all students proficient in math and reading with no demographic group below 85%. These are clearly aspirational. 90% of all students graduate from high school in 4 years with no demographic group below 85%. 85% of all English learners, English learning students make progress in achieving English language proficiency, and 95% of all students attend school regularly. That is defined as being present more than 90% of the time, with no demographic group below 90%. So at least 90% of the kids attend more than 90% of the time. The state's also planning to collect some information about school climate and safety, but that's not been fleshed out very much yet. So the North Star system. Basic goal, identify schools and districts, and this will generally be just like our waiver was on a 3-year cycle, where the state takes 3 years of data and averages it out to identify schools. 3 years. And these will be the schools that there's the most smoke from. Also, a second basic goal is to recognize schools for success. Again, this is less well fleshed out, but that's identified as a basic part of the system. So the system is not just about identifying where to put support, but also to recognize schools that are having success. Has 2 different kinds of basic components: stages for identification and kinds of support. And we'll walk through those. First, the three kinds of support. There's comprehensive support, which is ongoing support from the Regional Centers of Excellence, the RCEs. They're the ones who, if a school has been identified for comprehensive support, the RCEs go in, try to figure out what's the fire in this particular context, and provide support there. So it's customized to the districts. Who gets comprehensive support? Schools in the lowest 5% among Title I schools across the 3 identification stages. We'll get to those stages, identification stages. But so a Title I school in the lowest 5% after the machinery has cranked through its various identification stages. And high schools with a 4-year graduation rate below 67% overall, or in any of those demographic groups. A second kind of support is targeted support. Targeted support is largely to be provided by districts with the opportunity to participate in professional development and networking provided by the regional centers of excellence. Who are these? Schools in which any group performs below the average of the lowest 5% of Title I schools overall on at least one indicator in each of the 3 stages. So you've got indicators, which are the measurements that are being looked at, and the measurements are taken in 3 different stages. And if you're a school where any one of your demographic groups or your school overall is below the average of the lowest 5% of Title I schools, so this is any school, not just Title I schools, but performing below the average of the lowest 5% of Title I schools, you get targeted support. Schools in which any student group performs at or below performance thresholds for at least one indicator in each stage will get to what a performance threshold is on at least one indicator in each stage, and Title I schools with overall performance at or below performance thresholds for at least one indicator in each of stage 1 or 2. Ironically, I'm allergic to weeds. So when I mow the lawn, I have to wear a face mask and long sleeve shirts because we're really dealing with weeds now. Third kind of support is just identified as MDE support, and that's where MDE provides professional development and networking opportunities. And these will be for schools, Title I schools below any of the indicator thresholds in stage 1. So here's how the system works. Only those schools that fall in the lowest 25% on the indicators in stage 1 move on to stage 2. Only those schools in the lowest 25%, if you're talking about elementary or middle schools, or 50% if you're talking about high schools, in stage 2, on the stage 2 indicators, moves on to stage 3. A performance threshold on an indicator is the level of performance that puts a school in the lowest 25% or 50% for high school in stage 2. Okay, so that's why we talk about performance thresholds, which are really the performance level that puts you in that 25%, lowest 25% group. And the idea is it stages because you filter out as you go from one stage to the next. Only those that score in the lowest 25% stage 1 get considered in stage 2. Only the lowest 25% in elementary and middle schools get considered for stage 3, considered in stage 3. And what are the indicators? Well, in stage 1, the indicators are achievement in math, achievement in reading, and progress towards English proficiency for EL students. The measures taken in stage 2 for elementary schools, it's progress in math and reading, and we'll go into what progress means. For high schools, it's 4- and 7-year graduation rates. It's interesting because a 7-year graduation rate gets at the idea of our being obligated to provide education up to age 21. So that captures how you're serving that group of students as well. And then districts' progress and graduation rates are to be considered. And then stage 3 is consistent attendance rate. That's the kids being there more than 90% of the time. So calculations at each stage carried out for, and here, just like NCLB, it's carried out for all the students overall, and then for the different groups, which are the racial ethnic groups and the free and reduced price lunch, special ed, and English learners. You have to have at least 20 students enrolled at the school for at least half the year for those students to be put into the calculation. So the idea is It's not the student who just came to your school gets counted in your accountability calculations. Students have to be there at least half the year. And calculations are carried out separately for math and reading, and also separately for the different groups, as long as you have at least 20 in both the special ed and non-special ed, and 20 in English learners, 20 in, sort of odd to say non-English learners, native English speakers, and free and reduced price lunch and non-free and reduced price lunch. So stage one, right, the indicators, the first two indicators are math and reading achievement rates. There's the definition of which kids get included in there. The main thing is they need to be there half the year. They're using December 15th to the accountability window. And the calculation is slightly different from what it was before, in a subtle way. Number of students who exceed or meet standards, so those are the kids that we refer to as being proficient. They meet or exceed standards on the MCA, over all students who are tested or who were not tested but should have been tested. This means that if parents or students refuse to test, they get counted against you in the calculation of your achievement rate. And that's changed from what used to be the case. It used to be the case that there were separate calculations for your achievement rate and then your participation rate, and your participation rate had to be above 95%. Now, there's no separate participation rate calculation. Instead, it's folded into the achievement calculation by increasing your denominator. So all of your non-participants are treated the same way as students who are not proficient.
And some schools have a large number of opt-out or non-tested students. We have a handful.
We just have a handful, although it's been increasing year by year.
It is increasing?
Yeah. But, you know, we're starting at half a dozen or something like that of kids. So, pretty low. But some schools went from essentially 0 to, in St. Louis Park, yeah, it's something like half to 3/4 of their high school students doing it. Well, last year we got this long letter from a parent who's also a teacher in another school district, saying that, you know, this kind of testing reduces a kid to a number, and she objected strongly to that, and so did not want to participate. And I think, you know, the whole philosophy of the North Star system, where you make an analogy to a smoke detector, right, recognizes that a test score is just one measure. It's not the fire. It's just one of the indicators that there may be something going on below there that needs closer examination. So I don't think that this test scores reduce a kid to a number argument captures at least the intent of the system. The intent of the system is, yes, look, we need to have something that we can calculate consistently for all of the schools, but once we get the numbers down to the ones that need the closest attention, you forget about that number. Look at the school, what's the situation there, and what's going on there that you can address. EL achievement, this one gets interestingly complicated because EL students are different from one another in a lot of ways. The age at which they enter school is a big thing. Exactly where their initial proficiency rate is when they enter school. So what will happen is MDE will take a student's first year proficiency rate and consider what grade they're in and then figure out a timeline about how that student's English proficiency should increase over time. And what you do each year is measure the student against that timeline of achievement. Are they meeting their targets from one year to the next? What the timeline will recognize is the older the student is when the student enters, the harder the progress is going to be. Younger students grow much faster. It also recognizes that as you get closer and closer to proficiency, getting that last bit of proficiency is harder to achieve. The first few words that you learn, you can do pretty quickly. But when you start getting into subtleties of grammar construction, it takes longer. So they'll look at how after the first year, how did this kid grow compared to the proficiency timeline that we calculated. If they meet that target, great, you get 100 points. If the student only gets halfway to that target, then you get 50 points. If you go over the target, you still only get 100 points. And if your achievement goes down, you don't get docked points, but you just get 0 points. Now, what will happen is notice that after the first year, you set out this nice little timeline calculated on the basis of the student's age, grade, and proficiency level that first year. And then the second year, they may or may not hit that target rate. If they hit it, great, you can keep on going on that same line. But if they're above that calculated rate or below that calculated rate, then it's not really kosher to try to use that original line. Yes? So MDE will be recalculating every student's proficiency trajectory every year, depending on where they happen to perform, and now what grade level are they at, and so forth. And timelines typically between 2 and 7 years. And we talked about bounded by 0 and 100. So you don't ever get docked points. 0 is the lowest you go, and 100 is the highest you go. Even if you go way above your target, you only get 100 points. That's as much as you can get. But the next year, right, you're now going to be calculated from that high achievement point. So it's going to it remains tough for you to make your proficiency rate, because it's not like, oh, you made a lot of progress the first year, so the second year you can kind of sit back. Stage 2. So all the schools are looked at. If they have 20 or more students in the different groups, all the different groups are looked at on reading achievement. All the different groups are looked at on math achievement. All the EL students are looked at on that proficiency progress. The lowest 25% moves on to stage 2. In stage 2, what you look at is progress in math. Again, there are enrollment criteria, and then you assign points based on how the student did last year compared to this year. So if you move a student, up and down along the vertical is what happened last year. Across the top is what happened this year. If you move a student who does not meet last year into partially meets this year, you get 8 points. Because you've made progress with that student. If you have a student who was in partially meets last year and is in partially meets this year, you get 2 points. So you get some points for maintaining something better than does not meet. If you have a student who exceeds last year and exceeds again this year, you get 3 points because you're maintaining them at that high level of performance. So you go through all of your students, assigning points for each student, and then you get your average on math and average on reading. And remember that that just applies to middle schools and elementary schools. Again, if you're in the lowest 25% on that progress measure and you're in elementary school or middle school, you get moved on to stage 3. With high schools, the indicator at stage 2 is different. It's graduation rate, not progress on MCA. And then there are inclusion criteria about when a student was out of school and so forth, and how they're going to determine which students are in the EL group, special ed group, the free and reduced price lunch group. And there are 2 substages. First, 4-year graduation rate. The lowest half on the 4-year graduation rate get their 7-year graduation rate looked at. And the lowest half on the 7-year graduation rate moves on to stage 3.
We're not going to be tested on this, are we?
Well, I was thinking of a little exit quiz. Make sure you got all of the.
There's a question like, who keeps track of all this?
That's my
Well, you know,
I mean, we're
Someone
going to
had a
have
job
to
doing this.
understand it, but who in the world keeps track of each student? Moving up 2 points or 7 points or, I mean, it sounds to me like a lot of work.
it is a lot of work.
But who does it? The state?
MDE does.
And they do such a good job, so we can assure that everything is correct.
Well,
Not so much.
generally,
I
yes.
mean, you try to explain this to a parent. You think we have to take the test, they would just,
I think burnout rate is pretty doing that job.
Well,
I don't think I could last.
here's the problem, right? Because MDE is trying to recognize that one number does not capture everything that's going on. You have all of this other machinery going on. But by having all this other machinery, you make it like a black box. And people can't follow what's going on in this machinery. So they've tried to simplify the machinery while simultaneously maintaining a level of technical coherence. So it makes sense mathematically. Remember under MMR, we used to look at growth z-scores, right? And most people just sort of shake their head about z-scores. And the idea is that this table is easier to understand. You get this many points because you move from here to here. So it's a compromise between technical coherence, so actually capturing something in a consistent fashion, and understandability.
so we still have to send the numbers to MD.
MDE scoops the numbers out before we get them, because Pearson will report to MDE, and then MDE sends us the numbers.
And I think if I can interject and say, Member Warren, that certainly explaining this in great detail to families or parents is perhaps less critical than it is to indicate and show parents that we're paying really close attention to the many facets of learning. And we're doing that in a very individualized and frankly technical way with the assistance from MDE. So we have a very close eye on the students' achievement through this process. So it's not a rating system, we're getting an A, B, or C as a school district, but it allows us to really dig into the learning of all of our different students. And we've got expertise in our system to do that.
And here's my point, and you're maybe gonna get to it, so I apologize if I heard. What I have to be able to answer is a newspaper article that came out and said where we were on the spectrum. And, you know, for me to have to go through lengthily. So going to be able to capitalize where it is that we were in the spectrum? Why?
Yes, I can answer the why.
One group?
You know, one group in one case, a couple groups in another case. And it's that whole thing, I remember, oh, when Rob was on the board at that time, I don't know if anyone else, where I had this matrix of all of the different groups and all of the different things that are looked at for each group and how you could get dinged in any one of these cells, and we ended up with something like 64 cells or something. And that aspect of the system is still kind of here, except it's not so much, the mindset is not that you're getting punished for having something happen in a cell. The mindset is, if something happened in a cell, if we have the resources, we want to take a closer look at what's going on at that school so that we can support the school, so that that doesn't go on in that cell anymore.
Are you going to identify the 3 schools that were identified? Great.
Graduation rate, yeah, this is pretty much what our graduation rate calculation has been for the past few years. Remember also that it's a lagging indicator. So the graduation rate measurement in 2018 really is based on kids who graduated in 2017. And the same thing is going to be true for consistent attendance. It's a lagging indicator. So what percentage of kids were in school more than 90% of the days that they were enrolled. The measurement for 2018 is really based on attendance rates in 2017. Support for districts. It's interesting that that whole mechanism is applied to districts, but we don't really talk so much about districts receiving targeted support or comprehensive support or whatever, because the support for districts really comes from the World's Best Workforce, the state law, rather than the federal ESSA law. But this saves us having 2 different systems to explain to people. So the same system applied to schools is happening because of ESSA. Applying this 3 stages, all the different indicators, all the different groups to districts is because of world's best workforce. And that just comes down to districts in the lowest 10% after the 3-stage process receive support from MDE and the regional centers of excellence. So here's what happened for us. Remember, this is based on a 3-year average. So MDE looked back at data gathered in 2018, 2017, 2016 to do the identifications that just got announced. Our high school was identified for comprehensive support because the graduation rate was below 67% in the special education group. The ALC also identified for comprehensive support because the graduation rate was below 67% overall in the free and reduced price lunch group and in the white racial group. And part of that's because those are the only groups that there were 20 or more students in. And we did look at how, so that sounds pretty concerning overall and in all the groups that you could look at. But this is an ALC. So we looked at how does our ALC do compared to other ALCs. and we're in the ballpark. This is a special population of kids. And MDE recognizes that. And that's why the smoke detector analogy is really useful here. MDE says, okay, there's smoke coming from your ALC, but we need to get in there and take a much broader look at what's going on with these students to understand why there's that smoke. Identified for targeted support is Forest View Elementary, because their special ed and free and reduced price lunch groups were performing at or below the overall average of lowest 5% of Title I schools on at least one indicator at each stage. Okay, so once again, I could draw you this grid. There are 3 indicators in stage 1, and each of the indicators is applied to the 7 racial or ethnic groups and the free and reduced price, right? So you've got 10 groups, 3 indicators, so that's 30 cells right there. And then you do it for math and reading, so that's 60 cells that you end up with. And if you hit any of those cells, you can be identified. And I think that was all I had. I figured your head would be spinning around like by this point.
I'm sorry, I thought there were 3 schools that were in ALC.
High school, ALC, Forest View.
There's 7.
Yeah.
My next question is, that's certainly understandable, and I already explained that to one person today, and she went, well, yeah, okay. Because when we're looking at individual groups, I don't have a lot. But anyway, why aren't all schools in the same boat then? Because this is pretty hard for any school to not have some problem.
I think practically all the ALCs get identified because of this.
Okay, and how about the elementaries and seniors?
Yeah, well,
I mean, in the paper, and I have to look at the article again, but I mean, there were certain districts singled out, which meant many others weren't. And so my mind goes, why weren't they? I can understand why we were, but why weren't they?
in some cases, and this is a problem with, okay, the argument for looking at individual groups, or the different ethnic groups and whatnot, is because if you're serious about wanting to serve all students, you don't want smaller groups to be hidden. Because in a district like ours, where 85–90% of the kids are white, when you average all students, well, it's going to look a lot like the white average, right? Because the whites are such a large chunk of the overall thing. That's why the subgroups are picked out, and then what they calculate is what's your average among whites and African Americans and whatever, without weighting the different numbers. That is, here we get into weighted versus non-weighted averages. But sometimes when you take an average, you want to take into account how many kids were in that group. In this case, you don't want to do that, because when you do that, it covers up what's going on with the smaller groups. That has led some schools and some districts to talk about, well, if you've got a more diverse population, that is, you've got kids in a lot of the different subgroups, there are more cells that are being looked at, because you only look at a cell if there are 20 or more students in it. And for some districts, at least, the reason they don't get identified is because they don't have a lot of cells to be looked at. I think the reaction to that particular issue is a lot more muted now than it was under NCLB. because under NCLB, having a cell looked at was potentially damaging, right? Because you were going to be marked as, you know, a bad school. Now, having a cell looked at will potentially get you additional resources with the regional centers of excellence coming in and saying, okay, now we forget the numbers and look at what's going on in this school.
So Member Morty, I think it's important as a takeaway that under NCLP, a subgroup would identify a school as underperforming as a school. And we really need to move away from that notion that we're not underperforming schools. We have a subgroup that's not performing at the level we would expect. But that doesn't mean the school is underperforming. And I think that's a critical message.
And that's a critical message to get out to the
Yes.
folks, because they don't see it that way. When your school's identified for something, it's like, that's
That's
not a
right.
good school.
Yeah.
So, thank you for all the explanation. On the first part. That was a lot. That's in the note already, but.
I think it does show though, that we've got work to do. I mean, that, you know, it's, I like the idea of taking a close look at the individual groups, and because I think it's easy for kids to kind of fall into the average, and then we can brag about the school, which we like, but yeah, but if there's kids that are not achieving the way they should be, I mean, I think that's important that we look at it, and you're right, we do have the publicity problem of it seeming like the entire school's failing, but yeah, I mean, these are things we definitely need to address.
That's a really good segue to Director Zoide's work around, and her department and staff across our system as it relates to our work on literacy and math. There is a lot of really good and extremely hard work going on in both of those areas as a system, K-12. We have work to do. There's a lot of bright spots, but there's also, to be fair, work that we need to do, especially around literacy. I've asked Diane to come and talk about that work.
I have a comment question. So for Forest View one, I find it interesting, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Lloyd, that, you know, that's when we first get those Forest Lake kids. But it's the same kids at Forest Lake Elementary, just older, and they're not on there. So once we get them, we're doing better. We're lifting these kids up. Correct?
All the data that we have suggests that our biggest issues are the younger grades.
Good point.
You know, so that's kind of an interesting comparison. It's the same kids. You know, so
Right, and remember with Forest View, because this is based on MCAs, it's just the third graders that get looked at. So, and that's true across all schools, it's just the third graders. So all of the work that's happening with the K2, with the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you can't recognize the improvement because third grade is your starting point. And you know that what goes on in third grade reflects what went on in K2, and especially what the kids were like when they walked into K.
Well, it's interesting, it's only one elementary too, you know, and that speaks well to the other elementary student.
Yeah.
That we have a lesson.
Because part of what's going on is just what Luke mentioned.
Yeah.
Once we have them for a while, we are able to move them up.
Good point, thank you.
So the other elementaries have those other grades mixed in,
Right.
and Forest View only has the third graders.
Thank you for all your knowledge. I don't know,
Yeah.
two individuals that could understand it as well.
Okay,
So
so-
wow.
I'd like to make a request that we, like on a monthly basis, have like a Learning with Lloyd segment.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be about testing, like just anything he wants to talk about. Just, I feel smarter.
I
just
do
listening.
feel smarter.
My little story about
No,
that was
yeah,
Oh my God,
when I
90% my
first
God.
had a job, sophomore year of college, and I was working with these people, and they were like, okay, you know, this school you go to is a liberal arts college, and you don't know what you're going to major in. You've got all these psychology courses, all these sociology courses, all these linguistics courses. You are a liberal arts student. You need to have a marketable skill. So that summer, my friends taught me a marketable skill. I can key punch with the best.
So can I. I learned it too.
Thank you for.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Thanks, Lloyd. Yes, it is, as Chair Rayfield said, we have a lot of work to do and we recognize that. So while we do recognize that these are certain subgroups that we have been identified for, we know that we've got work to do. Dr. Komatsu has done so much work around helping us continue to examine the data each year. And over the last several years, in particular, we have really focused on that early learning need in both literacy and math. So that's much of what you'll see that we're talking about tonight around our curriculum work. We are looking K-12, but specifically focusing on what's happening in the early grades and how can we start supporting that work there. So to begin with, around literacy, one of the key pieces that we've been working on lately is reciprocal teaching. And reciprocal teaching, you can see the quote there, the one that's doing the talking is doing the learning. It's based on that premise that students need to engage in their learning. They need to be actively talking through and thinking out loud what they're learning and trying to process so that others can hear what they're talking about and help them correct their thinking or help learn from their thinking. So all of this with reciprocal teaching has to do with talking and discussion. So reciprocal teaching is really about discussion. The naming of it is a little confusing. The idea is for reciprocal teaching, a teacher teaches a student a particular strategy, models it for them. That student learns it well enough to now turn around and teach someone else. So that's the idea of reciprocal teaching. It's totally discussion technique. So you will find in these reciprocal teaching activities that are going on, students may be making notes or jotting some things down or using a little bit of a graphic organizer to help them, but it's not about reading silently and then writing something about it because the student doesn't have anyone to check their learning with that. So instead it's making a few notes and then talking it through with some of their classmates and thinking about what it is that they're putting down and does that make sense. So the key strategies with reciprocal teaching are predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. This is what experienced readers do constantly as we read, and we don't break them out and say, okay, I'm going to read a story now, I think I'll predict before I start. We're doing this constantly. As we read, we need to go back and clarify, we run across the word we don't know, but novice readers need to actually have this modeled for them and sometimes need to have it called out and say, wait a minute, let's look at this again. Did this make sense to you? This is a moment you might want to pause. So that's what reciprocal teaching is all about, is helping students learn those 4 key strategies. So why reciprocal teaching? It's about research-based learning. So it focuses on literacy and comprehension. It is research-based. It benefits students at all skill levels, and it's actually K-12. So we are actually implementing it all the way through the high school in certain classes and with certain students. But specifically in the early grades, as I talked about, that's our area of focus at this time. It supports learning in all content areas. So any content area where you're going to be reading something, you can use reciprocal teaching. So we're actually talking with teachers of other content areas that this is something you can be doing as well. At the elementary level, they're using it in science, they're using it in social studies, trying to really get students to recognize that these skills are used every time you look at text. It's student-centered and it's high impact. So as you look at all of the research-based strategies, reciprocal teaching is one that if it's implemented with fidelity, you can actually gain 2 to 3 years growth with students as they're learning these skills and engaging with groups of students around them. It supports our MTSS model. MTSS is multi-tiered systems of support. It's our ways of thinking about students who have different needs. We may have high flyers in the class. We might have students who struggle and need some additional support. We may have English learners who need some vocabulary and background building, and all of what's built into reciprocal teaching works for all students so that it gives them what they need at their level. So you can see that one of the things that teachers are doing with reciprocal teaching is they do their regular reciprocal teaching with their class, and right now we're asking teachers at K-6 at least to be thinking about 2 to 3 times a week and try to build that into their literacy block. For those students who might need some additional support, it might be a pull-out group and they get a double dose of reciprocal teaching. So another 2 times a week where they just have a small group and they're working on those strategies and skills so that when they go back with a large group, they're more confident in what they're doing. This is an example. This group of students is a third grade group. Shortly after we started our work around reciprocal teaching last year, one of the teachers took off with it and wanted to get it started in her classroom. So she took this small group of third graders that she thought maybe would be able to grasp those strategies pretty quickly. They were the ones to learn it first, and then they were going to turn around the next day following this video to fishbowl for their classroom, which would mean that they would be at a table modeling what you're going to see in this video, and then the rest of their classmates would be surrounding them and watching what they're doing, learning from them, and then when the new groups break out, each of these students would be a member of one of the new groups so that they can learn a little with them. So one of the things that the phrases here I put on is Fab 4, when we talked about the 4 strategies, the questioning, the predicting, the summarizing, and clarifying, that often is referred to as the Fab 4, with the idea that you want to keep the band together, you want to constantly be teaching kids to work with them all together. Yes, I saw that you got the Beatles reference there, and she had the Beatles piece that went along with it. So what you'll see in this video is they actually are using, they will go around the table and introduce themselves and explain which role they are playing. And so each one of them has a role assigned to them. And then the piece that you'll see in this video is just the beginning of their conversation around predicting. And they have learned this like a week before they did this activity.
I am Caleb. I am the questioner. I am Niall, and I am the clarifier. I am Hannah, and I am the summarizer. I am Leanna, and I am also the summarizer. I am Audrey, and I am the predictor. And we are from a mystery school. Okay, let's look at the title. Furry Find. Does anyone else know? It's like a round table. Alright, I think it is about a little animal that scientific people found. And like I said, I think they're gonna they may find lemurs. Yeah. I think that it's about this furry find, but he's also a very furry friend, and the scientists find it, and it's a lemur. They found it out of Madagascar, and it was not found until now. I think it's about a lemur too, and I think they're going to tell us a lot about it, like facts about it, of where it lives and where it makes its home. And I think it was hard to find it too. Okay. My prediction is it's going to be about, by the picture I see a lemur. So I think it's going to be about lemurs and where they're found and what they eat and facts about them.
So you'll notice in this video, the teacher did not interject. The idea is gradual release. So the teacher first models and teaches the students the strategies that each one of them will be in charge of. And then the students eventually become independent. At K2, you would see it large group teacher directed. Once they get to third grade and up, then they work towards being independent in their discussions. You'll notice too that there were table tents sitting in front of the students. Those were scaffolding pieces for the students. So each of the table tents had the role of that particular student on it and a few sentence starters or reminders of what they might do. So the predictor, I noticed, glanced at her little table tent just before she spoke. She was the last one in the circle who actually said, I predict. One of the sentence starters on there was, I predict. And then it mentions that in prediction of nonfiction text, they may want to look at images, they may want to look at headings. So she was actually very intentionally picking out some of those things as she made her prediction. So the 4 foundations of reciprocal teaching are those scaffolding skills that teachers use, and they actually use these throughout all of their subject areas, and these would be pieces that teachers would do all day long in their instruction. But they are intentionally placed in reciprocal teaching because they're key to getting the students to become independent. So the think alouds, this is where the teacher is doing the modeling, and when I read this paragraph, I was wondering about this particular word, so that they're modeling for the students and doing this think aloud so that they get the students get the idea of what they might be thinking as they're reading and coming up with a word that they don't know. Cooperative learning is exactly what you were seeing in that group, where the students are actually working together and playing roles and supporting each other. Scaffolding, I mentioned the table tent to try to help them remember what their roles were. They might have a graphic organizer, they might have some notes. So anything that would help the students continue to be independent or know what it is that they're doing with their strategies. And metacognition is that idea of thinking about your thinking. So with reciprocal teaching, one of the key pieces is to constantly remind the students, was that a prediction you were making? Did that help you as you were thinking about your reading? Or which of those 4 strategies helped you the most as you read this passage? Oh, clarify why. Did you run into some words that were difficult for you? So helping the students really think about what they were thinking so that they become more independent in using those skills on their own. So this one is a 7th grade group. This was actually at one of our junior highs last year. And again, they learned this strategy just weeks before they actually were recorded here. These students were reading The Outsiders, and the passage that they are discussing here has a lot of figurative language in it, so you hear them working to clarify and question what it is that they're reading and thinking about if they can clarify for each other what was going on. It's actually the boy in the far back right that is the clarifier in the group, so you'll see him do a lot of the speaking. Whoops, sorry about that.
Early leaves the flower, because the sunrise is beautiful, like nice looking. But it's only for an hour. It dies very fast, goes to noonday. Not too sure what the leaves inside the leaf means.
Maybe.
Oh, I mean, well, I'm not too sure what one that one is. I think this one, the so eat and sing to grief. 2 things is one, just like to rhyme, and because like when you see a sunrise, you feel happy. Like, yeah.
So you can see again, they're working independently. They learn the skills and they have a scaffold. The peach colored sheet that they have on the table with them actually reminds them of the roles and some of the strategies that they might use when they're conducting those roles. And the teacher was saying that this particular group only took a very short time to learn the roles and was quite independent after that and was able to easily rotate the roles and that they were able to function as a group. They had norms where they were listening to each other carefully and they were actually playing off of what each other was saying rather than just the back and forth of I predict. So they start to gain those skills as they work their way up in the grades and become more familiar with it. So reciprocal teaching, we've actually been working to embed in all of our work. So with the elementary at K6, our balanced literacy framework has been modified to show teachers where in the day they should be working reciprocal teaching in. So you can see reading in the literacy block is 40% of their time. It's the largest chunk of their literacy block. And it can be small group or large group. And again, we're asking teachers at the K6 level to be working towards 2 to 3 times a week. And that work, of course, last year we started getting to that point. We're starting to see teachers are becoming more comfortable with it. They're finding time, they're able to schedule it in. So we're seeing some nice progress with that. At the middle school, they have been working on thinking strategies. So the piece, again, with reciprocal teaching, when you think about the strategies we were talking about, it fits really well with the 7 thinking strategies. And they went specifically with this because they wanted to be sure it was something that fit across all the content areas. So you can see comprehension, asking questions, making inferences, all of that fits well with reciprocal teaching. And at the high school, they've been doing close reading and focusing on that. And again, close reading and reciprocal teaching is actually a strategy that can be used for close reading. And one of the high school teachers calls reciprocal teaching her close reading on steroids because the kids really understand the strategies behind it and can really dig in and they know the structure they're heading with. So last year we did the book study, and the Reciprocal Teaching at Work by Lori Oskus is the book that we focused on. All K6 teachers, including our specialists and including our special ed teachers, were part of the book study. And they spent each month going through the next chunk or the next chapter, discussing it together, thinking about the strategies, going back and implementing it, coming back together, discussing it. At the secondary, we had some of our teachers, so all of our ELA department were part of the book study, and our special ed teachers at secondary. And then our QComp peer coaches were all trained in reciprocal teaching as well, so that they have the language and the vocabulary and can support teachers in using it. And then we were fortunate enough to have Lori Oskus, the author of the book, come and join us in January of last year. I think I mentioned that to this group before. January 29th and 30th. The first day she spent in providing PD for our teachers. The morning was all with K-6 all together, and she went deeper with reciprocal teaching, talking about some of the pieces that would be helpful to them at their level. In the afternoon, it was around secondary and helping them think about what it looks like with their students. The second day was demo lessons, where Lori actually worked with groups of our students, and we had, again, that fishbowl idea where we had a whole room full of teachers surrounding the group that she was working with so they could observe how she worked with the students. So it started with a small group and then moved to a larger group, and then had an open question and answer time after the students left the room, and the teachers could just pick her brain about all of the things that they were wondering about and things that they were still struggling with in reciprocal teaching. So for this year, our plan is to continue the ongoing implementation of reciprocal teaching. We were fortunate enough to be able to hire 2 literacy coaches this year using categorical funding, and those funding areas were specifically meant for supporting students for the sake of student achievement. So it fit perfectly with these 2 literacy coaches. They will be spread across all 7 elementaries, so they're going to be extremely busy. But they have content area expertise. They know reciprocal teaching like the back of their hand. They are providing job-embedded professional development where they can actually push into the classroom. They can observe the teachers and what they're doing, provide feedback for them. They can model for the teacher and do an actual demo lesson, or they can do a co-teaching lesson to really help teachers go that next step with reciprocal teaching. So we're hoping to see much greater implementation this year and much more fidelity to the 2 or 3 times a week, and hopefully we'll see some results from that. And we specifically went with instructional coaches because research shows that instructional coaches have a great impact. So we're hoping that that's going to be the case, and we'll be watching our data around that. In the area of math, we specifically have been talking about number talks. And math, the biggest piece of math for students is having number sense. And that's where we're finding some of our students struggle. And if they don't get that number sense in their early years, they still struggle with it in the junior high. They still struggle with it in the high school. So even as we were talking about our area of focus, we had teachers at the high school who teach pre-calc saying, that's what my students don't know. They pull out a calculator when they have something like 6 times 12, and they don't have the ability to just be thinking what that is. So that's where we're going with number talks. And again, it's one of those strategies that involves student talk. So that opportunity to process and think about their own thinking. So what are number talks? There are short segments, so 5 to 15 minutes, and we cut them off at 15 minutes, absolutely, in order to make them be manageable. And they are about conversation. They are not about taking out a piece of paper and carrying the one. It's going to be about working or talking together about what they're thinking, and it's all mental. So it's not going to be something where they're going to solve something on a piece of paper. So those key pieces are what make number talks different from what teachers may have been doing with their math time previously. So why number talks? It's about fluency. So we often have teachers say, oh, they don't know their math facts. They get to 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, they don't know their math facts, and even in the secondary schools. And then the response is, well, they should be practicing with flashcards. It's really hard to get kids to just practice with flashcards when already they feel like they're behind the class. And flashcards is rote memorization. So I might be able to memorize 6 times 7 today, but 2 days later, I don't know if I'm going to know 6 times 7 anymore. So this changes it to a conceptual idea so that they are thinking instead about visually understanding what they're thinking about. So the other piece with number talks is it really supports equity, and I would say both number talks and reciprocal teaching. This is about building background for students, building their vocabulary, building that foundational knowledge, and it's good for all students. Our EL students, our free and reduced students, our special ed students can all benefit by these strategies. So Jo Boler is a professor of mathematics education at Stanford University. She has done immense work around understanding how students learn math. And she has written several books. Mathematical Mindsets is one that has been extremely popular in the education realm. And it's all about changing thinking around math. Because you have so many students that say, oh, I'm not good at math. Or, yeah, I'm not a math person. And you'll hear their parents say the same thing. So the student then gets off the hook because, yeah, my dad wasn't a math person either, so I'm not a math person. And what Jo says is everybody's a math person. We have to get past that thinking. So this is Jo speaking about why she's a big proponent of number talks. And I would say number talks is a piece of what she does. She goes beyond that to the whole mathematical mindset, but it's a key piece. She involves it in everything she does. Back up again. It doesn't want to. There we go.
So number talks can be done by teachers in the whole class, as we're going to see. Or parents can also do mini number talks with their children just by asking them the number problems and then challenging them to find a different solution, to work with a problem with a different method. Having kids solve problems in different ways teaches them a very, very important building block in number sense and mathematics. It is teaching them an ability and willingness to break numbers apart or decompose them and regroup them. This turns out to be a very important foundational base from which all of the mathematics builds, as Sebastian talked about. They also teach students something very important, which is that math is a creative and flexible subject. And this is so important. An English mathematician, Walter Sawyer, who wrote the book A Mathematician's Delight, once wrote this. He said, "The depressing thing about arithmetic badly taught is that it destroys a child's intellect and to some extent his integrity. Before they're taught arithmetic, children will not give their assent to utter nonsense. Afterwards, they will." And we certainly have a lot of evidence of that. We need children to understand numbers, not to blindly remember methods that they use, but to really understand why they work and how the methods may be used.
So, thinking about math is creative and beautiful. I hope we were all thinking about that before we started. So, back to the ducks. I showed you the duck image a little while ago. One of the things you would see in an entry-level number talks activity or lesson might be something like this. It's called a dot pattern or a dot talk. And with that, the teacher would ask, what do you see and how do you see it? And the idea is, do not count individually. Take a quick snapshot for yourself. How can you figure out the total number of ducks there and how are you seeing it? So take a moment to think about it. You didn't know you were going to have to actually work on this one.
It's ahead of the game.
So when we go to the next slide, this was actually presented to 9th graders. And in the 9th grade class, these were the 4 answers that were most frequently given. So the one in the upper left, I don't know how many of you were thinking about that, where it might be a 5 by 4, but there was one missing. So it's 5 times 4 minus 1. The one on the right, where we've got the 4 by 4, and then there's that extra row of 3 left over. So you've got 4 times 4 times, or plus 3. The one on the lower left where you've got the 5 times 3, and then you've got the additional 4. And then the one on the lower right where it's just simply adding the rows across. So this is what Joe was talking about with creative and beautiful. Every student can access this in some way. I don't have to be the brightest math mind in the classroom to come up with a strategy that I can share with the class. And this is my first introduction to number talks. This isn't where we stay, but this is how we get students into it to start thinking about, I have an answer that might be good to share. And you can see that all of these answers are exactly the same, but the middle piece, the how we got there, is the piece that's different. And that's what we want students to understand is you might not think about it the same way I did, but if we arrive at the same answer, we both have strategies that are viable strategies. Eventually, we work students toward efficient strategies. But to begin with, we want them just to think about what actually is a workable strategy. So here's a number talks example. This one is a 5th grade. This is not from our own district. We are just now digging into number talks. We have some who worked a little further into it, but we're not quite there yet. But this is 5th grade doing associative property. We're not going to watch the whole video, just a segment at the beginning and a little piece at the end that might help you see what it looks like when you get beyond that entry-level dot talk.
We're going to do another number talk. I'm going to put a problem on the board. When you know the answer, put your thumb up. Ready? Okay, this means I have a strategy but not an answer yet. This means I have 2 strategies. Okay, answers. Okay, Kylie?
180.
180. Kylie, would you like to share?
I knew that 2 times 15 equals 30, and I couldn't do 30 times 6 in my head that well, so I did 30 times 6 equals 18, and 18 times 10 equals 180.
Can anybody explain why Kylie did 18 times 10? Spencer, why did she do 18 times 10?
She did 18 times 10 because she was supposed to do 30 times 6, not 3 times 6. So she had times. So basically, she had to take 30 times. 30 times by 10.
Oh, I see. Is that correct, Kylie? That's why you did that? Okay. Did anybody solve differently? Jillian?
Well, it's a lot like her strategy, but I did 2 times 15 is 30. And then I did 30 times 3, and I think that was 90. And then I did 90 times 10, which was 180.
I understand that this part. Then you did 30 times 3 and 90 times 2. Why did you choose to do that?
Because half of 6 is 3. And then that was 30 times 3 is 90. And then I had to do that again to make the other 3 of the 6.
Is that clear?
Other half of the 6.
So this is 6. She split it in half and then doubled it back. Okay. One more, Ashley.
I did 6 times 15.
Okay.
And that equals 90.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did 90 times 2 equals 180.
So you went this way. Does it matter which direction you go? So you can go in any direction. Does that work with all operations?
No.
Put your thumb up when you know the answer. Okay, answers. Jalen. 180. Jalen, how do you know that so fast?
Because I knew that 5 times 12 was 60. And I did 60 times 3 measures 180.
Okay, so you multiply those to get 60, and then 60 times 3 is 180. Wow. Omar?
Well, I knew that the last problem we had a 6 on the very end. Then I realized that the 6 was now with 3. And then the 15, we had a -3, and now the 2 we added 3. So I knew it was going to be the same answer because it's the same problem.
It's the same problem. Okay, I'm kind of following you, but I'm not really clear.
What I mean,
I'm going to pause it here just to point out a couple things. One of the things you noticed was the hand signals. That's a structure of number talks. So nobody does this, and it has to do with not distracting others in the class and not making them feel like, oh, he's already got the answer and I'm not coming up with anything yet. So it's always a quiet fist in front of your chest. It's one thumb up when you've got a strategy that indicates to the teacher that you're ready to share something. But then it's, if you come up with another strategy, you put a second finger up, because those students who are done right away are going to start doing this, and instead they should be thinking about, do they have another way? Do they possibly have 3 ways? It keeps them thinking and engaged, while the other ones still have that opportunity to be thinking for a while. You also might have noticed some of them doing this. That's a signal that some of the teachers will use, and it has to do with, I agree with you. So if one student says, I did this, and then I did this, and you see students doing this, it's, yeah, that's what I was thinking, and it gives them an opportunity then to say, that's what I was thinking, without having to hear from every single student and taking time for that. Also, you'll notice what's happening here is this particular teacher is doing something that's called a number string, where she's combining, she's gave them one equation, or one set of numbers, for them to work through. She paused after receiving a couple answers on that one and gave another set of equations, and you can see they both have the same answer, and you heard some of the students making connections. That's what number talk about, making connections from my solution to someone else's solution and saying, oh, but you did it this way and I did it this way, and our numbers here match, and this is why they work together. So I wanted to show you the very end of this because it has kind of a cool ending where the teacher has now gone through, the teacher has now gone through multiple sets of different combinations, and you can see they're coming up with 180 each time. The students are starting to see some patterns in this.
Problem. Ready? Answers. Molly? 180. How did you know, Molly?
I did 12 times 10 is 120. And then I did 12 times 5 is 60. And I added them together and it was 180.
All right. Let's do that. I'm going to And that's what Reagan noticed a minute ago. That's 12
That's
times
the
15.
base of every single problem we just did.
Oh, why does that work?
I love his summary of the whole thing. Yeah. So, and although this was a recorded piece from a teacher who has actually been doing this for a while, I have heard from teachers in our district who have been implementing this. This is the kind of excitement and engagement they're seeing with number talks. And they're finding that students are requesting number talks on the days that they're not actually doing number talks. Are we going to do a number talk today? Because it's that opportunity for them to talk about their thinking. The teacher is set to cut it off at 15 minutes though, because the idea is keep it short, keep them wanting more, and then be sure you have time for it in addition to whatever you might be doing in math that day. So with number talks, it's engaging the students around their thinking, but helping them see connections between what they're doing. So 2 years ago in the summer, we started with a pilot, and we had 28 participants in that pilot. They were all K-6. We used a book at that time called Number Talks by Sherry Parrish. Those teachers dug into that book. We did some time together and gave them some opportunities to practice. They went off on their own and started doing some pieces of implementation that following year. We also offered to teachers an opportunity to do these online courses. Jill Bowler actually has a website called ucube.org. She and her graduate students maintain it and have all kinds of resources on there around mathematical mindsets. The first course she offered was Learning Math for Teachers. It takes 30 hours, so those teachers who took that on, it was really impressive. They dug into it. They actually had to go through modules. They had to redo pieces that they didn't get correct. They had to engage with each other in online chats on it. So 51 who participated in that first one through that first summer. Then when we got to last school year, Jill Bowler came out with a second online course, also a 30-hour course. This one was called Mathematical Mindsets. It was like the next step course. We had 31 participants from K-12 who took that on. And again, worked on it throughout the year. And I think part of the reason we had fewer participants is it was during the year. But the ones who did it were just thrilled with it and felt like they got a lot out of it. And you can see that poster that's shown there, Math is about learning, not performing. That's the whole focus around Jill Bowler's pieces. It's not about making sure that students are the fastest, they're not going to be the top scorer in the classroom. It's about how are we learning, what are we learning from each other, how can we make connections. So our number talks plan for this year, for 18-19, we are going to be doing a full book study with all of K-6 across the board. The book is Making Number Talks Matter. So this past summer, we offered, we called it the Number Talks Retreat to make it sound really exciting. And it was a 3-day opportunity for PD, for any teachers who were interested, K-12, to be a part of the Making Number Talks Matter initial piece of the book study, just to get their feet wet, to get an opportunity to dig in, and also to help be leaders in their buildings as they did the book study this year. So with that group of 54 spread out across the buildings, and again, we had all the way through K-12, so we had some middle school and some high school teachers participating in that. They now are back in their buildings with their colleagues. At K-6, they are doing the book study across the board, and all of them have received that book. For secondary math, it's really up to the teachers and their PLCs whether or not they want to engage some of their additional members, and it will be about what courses they teach and what students they work with. So I do know that the ones who were there a part of it this summer, the secondary teachers, were excited about it and how they might apply it in certain ones of their courses. So the ongoing support for that is, in addition to the books, they're doing the book study, we have purchased Sherry Parrish's updated version of Number Talks, the whole number piece, and she's also come up with a fractions, decimals, and percent that actually goes 3rd grade through 12th grade for additional support, and all of the peer coaches have been trained in Number Talks as well so that they can be of support. And I should mention, 2 of our peer coaches, Katie Bjorklund Strandland and Katie Gross, have given of their own time to help me facilitate these Number Talks PD sessions because they are both passionate about math, and they've done a phenomenal job. And during our last week with in-services with teachers, they were actually available in buildings to help support the Number Talks PD, getting up and running with the book study. So.
And we talked a lot about the principal's role in instructional leadership. Talk about the principal's role in this work.
Principals have been instrumental in every piece that we've done in both reciprocal teaching and Number Talks. We had several years ago building department chairs and district department chairs who led a lot of the work with budget reductions. That does not exist anymore, so our principals have taken on a leadership role with these instructional pieces. Every one of the elementary principals and several of the secondary principals were a part of the Number Talks retreat this summer, as with the reciprocal teaching piece the previous summer, to help get that up and running. And then they are the ones who are facilitating in their buildings as they do the PD. So they might have teacher leaders who were part of the summer
retreat piece to get up and running with it, but the teacher leaders are not expected to be the main leaders. The principals are taking it on, they're engaging, and it's exciting because they're actually talking the language with the teachers. They're walking into classrooms and seeing what it is and understanding what it is the students are doing and able to support the teachers in it. So they have been phenomenal in this work, and we could not have done it without their support. So very exciting.
Mr. Mayor, have you had any discussion with parents at conferences? Do they bring it up? Do they understand what's going on, or?
Several of the principals have set communications home around it, and I haven't myself had conversations with the parents, but from what I'm understanding from teachers, there's been a lot of interest around, especially last year with reciprocal teaching, getting an understanding around that. Now for some of our teachers, they're just starting with number talks this year, so I'm assuming we'll hear more. With both reciprocal teaching and number talks, some of the resources that are coming out and available now also provide opportunities for parents to have a better understanding, some handouts and background information that they can actually use. And number talks, another person who's really involved in number talks is Christopher Danielson, and I don't know, at the State Fair, if you've gone to Math on a Stick, there's this little section of the State Fair that actually is about students learning math in different, very visual, hands-on ways. He is a professor of math at Mankato State University and also very well known in the Twitter sphere around math education. And he was the one that started Math on a Stick, and he got several of the people that I follow on Twitter around math to be there at Math on a Stick this summer as sort of guest speakers. Didn't get Joe Bowler there, but got some of the other key people who really are movers and shakers in the world of math education. So I know that there were, I don't know what specifically our families, but there were so many families in Math on a Stick on the 2 days that I was at the State Fair. So very exciting to see that. And lots of that work can easily be applied to home opportunities for families. Yeah.
I love both of these programs, and I just think it's a progressive way of teaching, or especially like the reciprocal teaching, because it engages all different types of people. Kids, and there's no wrong answer. So it gets everybody to talk without feeling stupid.
Exactly.
Love it.
And I think that's that equity piece for me, is it really makes it accessible for every student. And that's the part that I think our teachers have a lot on their plate, and they're lots of times they're trying to figure out, how do I get to this student, how do I get to that student. This opportunity to be able to engage all students to begin with at the same level, and then have other students help be the support, because the conversation is happening among the students as well. So it's not just the teacher leader in the front and trying to figure out when they're going to have an opportunity to do something on the side with a particular student. It becomes a part of the work that they do.
I guess I like the second thing too, that because even we were just talking about memorization of multiplication tables. It seems like kids don't just know them.
Yes.
And that will make them the memory and learning how to solve problems like that. That is going to be huge, I think, for kids. Because I've been hearing that a lot from, like, even current high school students that just graduated. They just don't multiply in their heads like we learned.
Yeah, we learned rote memorization. When I was watching the 5th grade video and seeing some of the combinations the students were coming up with, I was thinking, whoa, I had to think about that one for a moment. And very exciting, and the way that they made connections then. And I think that has to do with this is how they have been learning over a period of time.
Yeah, so that's it's interesting to see how that's going to progress.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. So we're hoping to see some results. We, of course, know that this is our first implementation year fully, at least for number talks. We are, as I said, for reciprocal teaching, I mentioned 2 to 3 times a week. Number talks, we're wanting the teachers to work towards every day. So at the elementary level, at least at K-6, we're talking about every day, but that doesn't mean right now in September, because for many of them, they've only cracked the book and read the first chapter at this point. So by the end of the year, that's their goal. Again, the idea is keep it short. Don't let it go past 15 minutes or you won't make time for it. But I would say that video we were watching with 5th grade, if you watch the entire video beginning to end with all of the different variations of that equation that she's putting up there, it's a total of 10 minutes. And when we pointed that out to the Number Talks retreat people this summer, they went, oh, because they accomplished so much in that 10 minutes, and it really was just 10 minutes, and then she said, all right, we're moving on to the next part of our day. So, and it does map, the Number Talks piece does not need to necessarily tie to the specific lesson of the day. So we've talked about with grade levels where there might be some switching going on at the elementary school, where one teacher pretty much does the math and one teacher pretty much does the science. That doesn't matter for Number Talks. Every teacher can be working with Number Talks, because it can be the thing that you do when you walk in the morning. It can be the piece that you say for after lunch when you want the kids to come in and gather and get focused again. So we want all the teachers to be engaging with Number Talks with students so that they have that ability to talk through the process with the students.
All right.
Let me just add quickly that systems don't move forward when things are done haphazardly or in pockets. Our systems will improve because we're, as a system, are doing really good instructional practices in literacy and math. And a real tribute to Diane's department, including Lloyd and Brad and coaches, the instructional coaches, peer coaches, and teachers across our system who are really rolling out their shirt sleeves around the world. It's impressive, and we're expecting improvement in reading and math because we're doing good work.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Diane. That's great.
All right, moving right along at a good pace. Positive happenings. Dr. Olson, you want to start?
Yep, the only thing I had on there was our fantastic ABBA performance. First, the teacher welcomes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Member Corcoran?
Mine is just same thing, welcome day, exciting for all the new staff to start, and then my son going away to college, a big welcome at the U of M. So very excited for that, and a special thank you for sending him off in he's very ready and excited to learn, he said. So I'm like, can't ask for a better start than that.
Again, lucky to be a part of this kid, and Luke, I'm sorry you weren't involved because Hollywood, I'm sure, is calling, and I'm sure we're going to have to work something along with the teachers. But I think the whole idea, I think the teachers and the staff, all of the staff get it now, that the reason we're there kind of making fools out of ourselves sometimes is the fact that we don't want to be just sitting here, 7 people making rules for them to follow, that we are very human, and I've heard that many, many times, because the second part of my positive happenings, after all my years, I've never really gone to a school on the first day. I always thought, well, it's way too busy, you can't bother anybody, it's the first day busyness. But this year I decided, no, I just want to go and see and welcome the staff back and see the students. And I went to 5 schools so far, and we'll get to the rest of them, and just totally impressed at the readiness of our staff, the principals, so organized, the kids coming in, the diversity that's in our district right now. It was so fun, and I don't know why I didn't do that every year. And again, we've got some comments from staff that it's wonderful to see us. And I explained that they're working people, and they aren't as fortunate to be able to come. But they said, please encourage them whenever they can come into the schools. It means so much to the staff. And so I just wanted to pass that along to all of you, that if you ever get a break, just walk in and say hello. It means the world to them.
Thank you. Member Peterson?
So we actually had the first day of school and sent my son off to the first day, and it went very well, and he was very excited to go, and excited when he got home, which is always good. It's not always the case.
Nothing for me. All right. I just, just a great kickoff. We have had so many changes that have been taking years and years and years to kind of culminated with these, the junior high and high school coming together, and it went great. It went great, and so big thank you to everybody who was involved with that. I can't even imagine the amount of work that went into having all that come off like it did, but thank you so much to our staff who was part of that.
And the construction people.
And the construction people too. Yeah, there were some of them. I was at Scandia and for the opening, and the building looked beautiful. And oh man, it brought a tear to my eye because so many people have. But I mean, that's taken years to get to that point, and it looked just fantastic. So I was sure to thank the construction workers who were there for their work, and because they were running around finishing stuff up. So yeah, so that was great. All right, reports. Do we have any workshop or conference?
Just one. I'm sorry, Mr.
Go ahead.
Just one. I was able to go to the MSBA, the High Performance Mindset, and Cassandra Hemp was excellent, and I did make some copies. Connie did, thank you, Connie, to pass around because you'll get a little synopsis of what she was talking about, and it really wasn't about education per se. It was a really changing the high performance mindset for ourselves, and we can apply it to our lives in many different areas. And she was very, very good. If we ever need a speaker, I would highly recommend her. She engaged everyone. She did her homework before, so she knew what it was that we were going to be looking for and needing. And I was just very thrilled to be able to go to that. So thank you for the district for letting us go to these things.
All right, thank you. 916, Mayor Olson.
Yes, we met yesterday. We discussed their legislative agenda for the upcoming year. We toured their new educational center called Quora, which takes over the old Capitol View in Little Canada. Gorgeous facility. East Bethel has contracted with 916 to provide educational services for Cambria Hills, which is a psychiatric residential treatment facility that Forest was unable to house. So happy that they are going to get the education that those kids will need. And kind of an interesting note, their keynote speaker for their staff was a guy named Sam Mitlich, I believe his name is. He's a widely successful jazz guitarist and a married father of 2 who happens to have schizophrenia. So that was their way of overcoming the stigma of mental illness. So I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you. Equity Alliance, Member Moorhead.
We're continuing with our new executive search and working through policies right now. And I just sent again today, because I couldn't remember if you'd all got the newest fall newsletter. And you'll see in there that we have now Regina Seabrook, who's taking the new role of the new programs and development. And I'm going to be able to go to the fall meeting on October 17th, where they'll be coming out here to work with our staff. And that's going to be from 9:30 to 11:30. So again, if anyone would have time, I think that'd be a very interesting time for our equity meeting. And I also want to ask if it'd be okay if they came out for their November meeting. There's a little hole in the schedule that they needed to fill, and I said, well, I'll ask and see. They've come out before.
Yeah, we'll make it work. I'll work with you.
Good, and our equity people then will be able to provide what we do here so well. And they'll be able to see maybe a building or 2, I don't know. We'll work that out.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
All right, City of Forest Lake, Member Moorhead.
Well, as you can remember, they did hire a new city administrator, Patrick Casey. I don't see our liaison here today, but he's from the village of Salem Lakes, Wisconsin. And I thought it'd be wonderful to invite him on, I don't know when or what for, but when I spoke to him, he said in Wisconsin, it's automatic that they pass levies and things. And that he thinks it's very important for schools and cities to work together. So that just really put him on a high list for me. And I think it's something that we should get him in and get him orientated as to what a fine job we do. And I think he'll be a real asset to us.
Do you know a start date offhand?
I don't. I was hoping that he might be here because they were working through contract things and hopefully nothing's going to change that. But they did end up with 3 very, very good finalists. Our own Dan Undum was in there and another fellow, can't remember where he's from. But all 3 of them were accepted by the entire city council, which is amazing for them to all agree on anything. And he was a 5-0 for the new one, but they all commented that they could have taken either of the other 2 highly qualified. So again, thankful that they went with their search company and then they listened to the search company. 2 good things.
All right, thank you. Reshaping Opportunities for Success, 2015-2020. Director Martini.
Thank you and good evening. I'm going to just share a few photos with you. This has been pretty exciting. About a month ago, Renee Reedy and I took Hannah Davis through the high school, and it was quite alarming how much work still needed to be done. But she commented specifically on the media center that I can't see how this is going to all come together. You know, the outcome of that meeting with Hannah, we spent a lot of time about the mechanics of the budget, and we finally got the headline that we were seeking on budget and on time. It's been, what, 2.5 years of working that? But here's the reason why. These skilled professionals are the reason that we are on time, on budget, and have done such a great job with our facilities. Mike is still running around crazy. He updated me today with goings on at Scandia, Lino Lakes, and Linwood. And I just wanted to share a separate project from the bond project. We redid the parking lot at Forest Lake Elementary. And also, if you look along the sidewalk path to the north, that's one segment of the Safe Routes to Schools. It also goes all the way up to the Central Learning Center, then heads west, all the way out to, where Petco and Aldi actually located. So that Safe Routes to Schools submission was really successful for our community.
Larry, we've been looking at renderings for so many months, we're now seeing the real deal.
Yes, absolutely, it's exciting. No more renderings at Lynham. This is an aerial shot that Mr. Brockman took just this morning, and as he was driving past, he slowed down just enough to capture the entrance. Turned around, walked back in the secure entrance, and you'll notice a staff member inside. She found the building secretary as well, and so there's the two Lino Lakes staff members smiling away. Photo just taken today, as a matter of
You
fact.
should have seen the parents when they walked into that building. They were just blown away. They were so excited with the space and the lighting and the openness, and it was just so wonderful to be a part of that. And the kids too. Oh, look at this! Oh, look at that! It's an amazing building with amazing staff.
Very exciting stuff. Well, we didn't get inside to Linwood, but they are still busy craning with rain delays and that. They weren't able to crane up all the equipment into the center section. So today they were actually craning some of the HVAC units up onto the steel there. And you'll see in the foreground, there's 4 or 5 more left to go up on the roof where that other one's getting placed. But school's underway there. Everybody's excited and it's working out. Over to Scandia. You mentioned like the walkway up, those stars that are imprinted in the concrete.
My wife and I were walking up and we were like, oh boy, the parents are gonna be disappointed when they can't paint stars on this because that's been the tradition. And then we walk up to the concrete and the stars are embossed into the concrete. It was great. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, if we look just at ground level, you can get a faint representation
Is
of
that your
there.
idea? That's a great idea.
No,
I think Miss Grinding drove that bus on that.
Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
that's super.
So Tim actually did enter the building. He went through the secure entrance and found Kathy Wolfbauer busy at her desk. So we're still working at Wyoming Elementary on putting the bus loop in the back and having that exit enter out of the north section on 61. We just found out this morning, Steve and I with a meeting with the city folks, we first thanked Ryan from Bolton Mink for the asphalt on School Road because we were worried that you wouldn't be able to get into Forest View. I don't know if you've noticed that, but that occurred just before Labor Day, and he said it was a personal favor that he got out of the contractors to make that happen. But we know Dimitri, the gentleman that we've worked with on the roundabouts here from MnDOT, also is the authority for Highway 61 up in Wyoming. So we'll be talking with him about the road accesses there. We learned that today. So now on to the secondary. A nice shot of the gymnasium on the right-hand side, the new house on the left side. And so right in the center, that's the primary entrance. And if we come a little closer, you can see the bus loop where we've got an added lane. So that's been working well. We've improved our times significantly. This is the 3rd day of testing, so our Goodview and high school, middle school blockage at 7 o'clock and 2 o'clock is diminishing and it's beginning to work well. He went into the middle school. He did get past the police officer in the secure entrance to see Christy Gatormson as the middle school head secretary. Over at the media center, that did come together. Of course, he took a photo of Leanne Brockman. Here's another shot of the media center. And this is an aerial view looking to the northwest because the other shot looking in the opposite direction is now going to be used as our community open house flyer. That's going to take place Saturday, September 22nd. And we'll tour high school, middle school, Columbus, Scandia, and Lino. And we'll be touring the other elementaries next fall.
Will we be having buses?
That is our game plan. Dr. Massey?
Yeah, we're in discussion whether or not they'll be used, and we're trying to analyze that, so.
I spoke to one person today who was thrilled. That's only one person.
Okay.
So you have to think on that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think it's a neat idea.
Show off our buses too.
So what's up and coming? Summer 2019, we'll complete the Southwest renovations. There'll be work all this school year. Wyoming, the design should be completed here in the next month or so for pricing. That would most likely go out to bid in end of November, early December. And Linwood Phase 2 would be completed next summer. And then work on Central Learning Center. So pretty exciting stuff. Any questions or comments?
How's Bus Garage doing?
Well, they're happy, and their stress level is reduced 50% each of the last 2 days compared to Tuesday.
It's a big job. Oh my gosh.
I didn't fill out a green card, but I just want to say the media center is impossibly awesome. You can't even believe it's the same place. The media center in the high school, it's hard to believe that it was the place that you're currently sitting.
You can bring that up again.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
have sold
It's
some of
so
that
nice
orange
and
carpet
bright,
for-
isn't it? It's so bright.
Yeah,
Like,
souvenirs.
That's what I like.
It's
I'm like, wow. The
All
kitchen, the kitchen in high school, they have a little, you know,
Still
last minute
vintage,
stuff.
right?
Yes. Oh, what was the reasoning behind the wall and just the window?
Well, I don't have that answer. So your question is, what's the reasoning behind the wall
Yeah,
to
everything was
separate?
so open before, and now it's like,
We had to expand the kitchen
oh,
for serving 500 more students, so we had to expand the kitchen.
okay.
And rather than encroaching in, out into the cafeteria, we need to create that room.
Okay. It's a little, I mean, we'll get used to it, but it's a little daunting like
Yeah,
that.
we'll get used to
Put some, can we put some color on that or something?
it. It's got the yellow, it was all.
Honda.
All right, superintendent, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Superintendent's report.
All right, you'll be happy to know that I've crossed off a number of things to speed us along that have already been touched on. Just to express a debt of gratitude to all of you guys for showing up for our kickoff with our staff. Your skit was really, really well received. As Member Moorhead pointed out, the personal touch there is really appreciated by the staff. There's great energy throughout our schools, and quite honestly, it's nice to be underway after a long summer. The only thing I'll add on the construction update is that the start of this school year is the culmination of the vision that drove the facility task force. You'll recall that their vision was to create a unified secondary campus. So the first day of school was the fulfillment of that vision of all 7th and 8th graders at the middle school and all 9th through 12th graders at the high school. So the extraordinary amount of work that that task force put together, pulling that vision together that drove the successful bond in 2015, came together in just great fashion this past Tuesday and the start of the school year. Much for the community to be proud of. Larry already touched on the open house. We're putting the detail of the planning and the marketing and communication for the open house. We hope we draw a lot of our community members into the schools that will be open on Saturday, September 22nd. Just real quickly, our enrollment update. We're holding steady with enrollment. If we look at enrollment from the end of last school year to now, we're tracking really well. From the start of last school year to this school year, we're on prediction. We know we're losing students, between 50 and 100 students a year, and we think we're tracking on that. It's important to note that we're tracking well with our prediction in light of closing Central Montessori and the addition of 7th grade at St. Pete's, which theoretically could have been a loss of even more students than we're seeing. We actually captured 70% of the students from the Montessori school. Recall the conversations we had at the time that we might lose half or more of those students. The day the board made the decision to close, unfortunately, Central Montessori School, principals and staff from CME were working with families, bringing them into the various elementary schools, forming those relationships, helping them see the various programs available in their other schools. That all paid off with, at this point, 70% of those students staying with us. So, and we're very proud of that. Lastly, a quick update on our operating levy. You know, the election day is November 6th. We have put a lot of energy and time into building our website and our communication tools as a district. We're really driven by putting accurate, of course, and thorough, comprehensive information out there for the community to digest and understand, and hopefully support our referendum in November. We had our first mailing, our first mailing is at the printer and will arrive at doorsteps here early next week. I sent a copy of that to each of your emails. It's a powerful piece that really lays out the case for the referendum and answers a lot of questions I think that the community has regarding the referendum. In addition, we're holding 6 community conversations to draw the community in, to engage with them, to answer questions, and hopefully bring their support forward for the referendum. We're at Scandia Community Center on September 17th. All of these at 6 p.m. Split Rocks in Wyoming on September 24th. Forest Lake American Legion on October 2nd. Linwood Community Center October 8th. Lino Lakes City Hall on October 15th. And Columbus Community Center October 22nd. We're hoping to draw a large number of the community into these events. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Do we have any items that we'd like pulled on the consent agenda, 7.1 through 7.4? If not, do we have a motion to approve 7.1 through 7.4? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. Agenda item 8, donations. We'll go over there.
Yes, we've got $5,519.14 from the Forest Lake Volleyball Booster Club to the high school volleyball team for payment of an assistant varsity coach. A trumpet from Laura Palomeros to the Forest Lake Area Middle School Band for a student use valued at approximately $125. $100 from Benevity in Calgary to Forest Lake Elementary for student needs. $1,433.80 from the Ranger Football Booster Club to the high school boys soccer team for partial payment on new boys soccer uniforms. Conference space and Buntinis from Stella's on 97 to Forest Lake Area Schools Special Ed Department for professional development of paraprofessional staff valued at $1,534.40. $1,200 from Jeffrey Toki in Scandia to Forest Lake Area Schools for food support for family in need. $1,500 from the Forest Lake Baseball Association to Forest Lake Area Middle School for ball field improvements. $1,000 from Maranatha Assembly of God in Forest Lake to Wyoming Elementary for school supplies. $9,000 from Wyoming Elementary PTO to Wyoming Elementary for general use. Professional learning resources from Jennifer York Barr to Forest Lake Area Schools for continuous professional learning for school staff, valued at approximately $384, and $1,300 from the Forest Lake Wrestling Booster Club to Forest Lake Area Schools for a new logo in the wrestling room, for a total of $23,096.34. And with that, I move approval of those donations.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
It's always great to see the community support. The donations really tell a story.
And the Booster Club stepping up and help each other.
Yeah, and the thing about the booster clubs is, like this, they're hiring an assistant coach. That's very much appreciated, and it's such a great thing for our kids, so appreciate it. All right, with that, all in favor of accepting the donation, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, donations accepted. Old business 9.1, approve agreement with Balance Point Strategy, SBC, to conduct second annual review of the district's health plan. Superintendent? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Martin.
Thank you. Balance Point Strategy is proposing to conduct their second annual strategy review of the district's self-funded health plan. They'll present key quantitative and qualitative observations and comparisons with up to 6 different school districts for benchmarking purposes. They're proposing to do this work with a 33% discount. I think the report that we received last year, the executive summary was some 15 pages, and the report itself was approaching 70 pages. This total fee of $2,667 it really is virtually nominal. It wouldn't be a general fund cost. It would go against the plan in Fund 20. And this report will assist the school district in further aligning the performance of its health plan with our overarching goals. So we're recommending approval of this health plan review.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
So of course, I think we're very blessed to have that opportunity for our staff to do a good job.
All right, any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Member Clerk, please take a roll call.
Member Moorhead?
Aye.
Member Peterson?
Aye.
Member Odegaard?
Aye.
Member Rayfield?
Aye.
Member Olson votes aye, and Member Corcoran?
Aye.
All right, thank you, motion approved. 10, new business, nothing. 11, review upcoming calendar dates, take a look at them. And 12, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor say aye.
Like,
Aye. All opposed? Thank you, everyone.
like to be.